Helen Parker merely smiled as she was directed toward economy class. She could hear the flight attendants' mocking glances and the whispers of other passengers. Did she really try to get into first class with those jeans and sneakers? Some people don't know their place. Helen pulled out her cell phone and sent a quick message to her husband. Darling, I think you'll need to speed up that airline acquisition. I was denied first class. London Heathrow Airport was filled with the usual crowd of people. Travelers from all over the world rushed from place to place, dragging their suitcases, waiting impatiently at passport control, sipping coffee at expensive airport cafes. Terminal Five's glamorous shops, with their perfume scents and gleaming displays of luxury goods, resembled a shopping mall. Flight announcements were made in multiple languages, listing destinations around the world. But in the midst of this hustle and bustle, 36-year-old Helen Parker moved with a different energy, calm, unhurried, unaffected by the chaos around her. It was as if she lived in a different dimension of time. Everyone else was the racing hare. She was the wise tortoise. Helen wore jeans, a white t-shirt, and comfortable sneakers. Her brown hair fell naturally to her shoulders, and she wore minimal makeup. Around her neck was a thin silver necklace, and she carried a simple brown leather shoulder bag. Her only luxury accessory was the elegant diamond ring on her left hand, but it was mostly hidden under the sleeve of her denim jacket. With her single suitcase, backpack, and book in hand, Helen looked like an ordinary passenger. Perhaps a teacher, perhaps a writer, certainly not someone living a luxurious life. The book cover read, Jane Austen's Emma. Helen loved classic literature, especially works featuring strong female characters. She had completed a master's degree in English literature and once taught at a small college before meeting Robert. Final call for Atlas Air Flight 207 to Singapore. All passengers, please proceed to Gate 27. Helen quickened her pace. She didn't want to miss this flight. She had checked in later than usual because Robert had received an urgent business call that morning. Her husband, Robert Parker, in his early 40s, was normally thoughtful and calm, but he had seemed a bit tense this morning. Dressed in his gray suit, his suitcase packed, he was trying to make an important meeting in Singapore. I'm sorry, darling. The meeting in Singapore has become more critical than usual, he had said at breakfast, his eyes on his documents. Go ahead and board the plane. I'll come on another flight. I'll meet you at the airport. Thinking of the anniversaries and special occasions they had missed before, Helen sighed softly. But she understood Robert's job. Being the CEO of WP Investments wasn't easy. The company had become one of the world's largest private equity firms in the last decade and took most of Robert's time. When Helen reached the gate, flight attendant Christina Martinez was greeting the last few passengers. At 32, Christina had been working at Atlas Air for 10 years and was now an expert at classifying passengers at a glance. First-class passengers, expensive suits, perfect manicures, accessories from famous designers. Economy passengers, comfortable clothes, travel pillows, over-ear headphones. Business class, laptops, smartwatches, quick and efficient manners. Christina's flawless makeup, tightly pulled back black hair, and professional smile had been shaped with the perfection of years. In Atlas Air's elegant navy blue uniform, she was like a symbol of authority and luxury service. Your ticket, please, said Christina, without looking at Helen, appearing busy with the documents in front of her. Helen extended her passport and first-class ticket. Robert had surprised her with a first-class ticket for her birthday. Helen normally preferred to travel in economy class. She found such luxury unnecessary, but her husband's gesture had touched her. Robert understood Helen's modest habits, but he also liked to spoil her occasionally. Christina examined the ticket, then looked at Helen with suspicion. It was indeed a first-class ticket, but the woman in front of her didn't look like a first-class passenger at all. First-class passengers carried Prada bags, wore Rolex watches, and the latest fashion. Helen's simple appearance definitely didn't fit this mold. Miss Parker, I'm afraid there's a mistake here. This is a first-class ticket, said Christina, with a slightly condescending tone in her voice. Helen smiled with a sparkle of understanding in her eyes. She had encountered similar reactions before. Yes, that's right. My husband made a surprise. For my birthday. Christina frowned. She had encountered fake first-class ticket cases before. Passengers who bought economy tickets, then changed them with Photoshop to try to travel in first class. This woman was probably one of them. Plus, she had arrived at the last minute, perhaps hoping not to be noticed. "Madam, there seems to be a problem with our system," she said with a completely fabricated excuse. "Our first class section is completely full. We'll have to place you in economy class." This was a complete lie. There were at least 3 empty seats in first class. Christina knew this very well. But eliminating such unsuitable passengers gave her a kind of satisfaction. Perhaps it was compensation for the disappointments in her own life. She had once dreamed of being a model, but had not been found tall or thin enough. Now using her small power to classify others gave her a sense of superiority. Helen's smile didn't fade, but her eyes narrowed slightly. "Interesting. My husband specifically reserved a first-class seat. Perhaps you could check your system again?" Christina smiled arrogantly. "I've checked our system, madam. I'm afraid we only have economy seats left on this flight. Fortunately, we were able to find a seat for you." The other flight attendant, standing behind Christina, Melissa, was watching the situation. At 29, Melissa had been working at Atlas Air for 5 years and had noticed this kind of behavior from Christina occasionally. She knew Christina sometimes acted arbitrarily towards passengers who didn't look right, but she didn't dare to intervene. Christina was a more senior attendant and could make Melissa's career difficult. Helen thought for a moment. She could argue, insist, even demand to speak to a manager, but that would just be a waste of time, and the flight was about to depart. Besides, traveling in first class or economy didn't make a big difference to her. Any seat where she could read her book and get some sleep was enough. "All right," said Helen, taking back her ticket. "Economy class it is." Christina felt victorious. She had done it again. Placed someone who didn't meet her standards in their proper place. "Do you prefer aisle or window, Miss Parker?" "Window, please," said Helen, taking out her cell phone. Christina gave Helen a new boarding pass for economy class, 32F, at the back of the plane. "Have a good flight," she said, turning to the next passenger. As Helen boarded the plane, she sent a quick message to her husband. "Darling, I think you'll need to speed up that airline acquisition. I was denied first class." She sent the message and put her phone in airplane mode. Then she proceeded to her seat in economy class, smiling amid the flight attendant's puzzled looks. The "I was denied first class" message was an understandable joke for Robert. Recently, Robert had been interested in buying some airlines, and Helen often teased, "Maybe you should buy one to improve customer service." As she passed through the plane's luxurious first-class cabin, Helen noticed the empty seats. Christina's lie was obvious, but Helen didn't care. There were bigger battles in life, not worth fighting over an airplane seat. Meanwhile, in one of the skyscrapers in London's financial center, Robert Parker sat in a meeting room on the 50th floor. At 43, Robert, with his gray suit, blue tie, and carefully combed brown hair, projected the perfect image of a businessman. With his sharp features, meticulously cut hair, and intelligent gaze, he managed to impress everyone in the room. Across from him sat Harold Thompson, the CEO of Atlas Air and the senior management team. Harold was 55, overweight, red-faced, a stressed man. He had been running Atlas Air for 15 years, and the last few years had been difficult. The pandemic, rising fuel prices, staff issues, and now this, the potential sale of the company. Harold and his team looked tense, and they were right to be. Robert Parker was the founder and CEO of WP Investments, owner of one of the world's largest private equity firms. According to the latest issue of Forbes magazine, his personal fortune was around $11.8 billion, and he was now conducting final negotiations to purchase Atlas Air. "Let's review the final details of the deal," said Robert, opening the file in front of him. His voice was calm and controlled, but filled with determination. "We'll acquire 51% of Atlas Air for $4.2 billion. The current management will remain in place for another year, and we'll assess after that." Harold Thompson nodded, wiping the sweat drops from his forehead. "Yes, Mr. Parker, but as we mentioned earlier, your competitor Blue Capital has also come with a very aggressive offer. Our board is still undecided and—" Robert's phone vibrated. Normally, he wouldn't check his phone during a meeting, but he always checked messages from Helen. He looked at the screen and smiled slightly. As soon as he read Helen's message, an expression of understanding and determination appeared in his eyes. "Mr. Thompson," said Robert, putting his phone back in his pocket, "I think we're going to make a small change to our plans." Harold frowned. "What do you mean?" "I'm revising our offer," said Robert in a calm tone. "We want to acquire not 51%, but 100% of Atlas Air. And we want to do this today, right now." Everyone in the room looked at each other in astonishment. This sudden change was unexpected. Even Robert's assistant Jennifer looked surprised. She usually knew every move of her boss in advance. "But Mr. Parker," said Harold, his voice trembling, "this means a completely different deal structure. The board's approval, shareholders' vote, regulatory review will be required. This process could take months." Robert smiled politely, but the determination in his eyes was clear. "Mr. Thompson, as WP Investments, we're offering a price 30% above your company's current market value. Our offer is valid until 6 p.m. tonight. After that, we'll go directly to your shareholders." Harold's face paled. He had heard how ruthless a negotiator Robert Parker could be, but now he was experiencing it firsthand. In the business world, he was known as the White Shark. He looked gentle, but once he smelled blood, he was extremely deadly. "May I ask why?" Harold asked, loosening his collar. "Why are you suddenly in such a hurry? Last night when we spoke, we agreed on a gradual acquisition." Robert thought for a moment, then answered with a sincere smile. "Let's say I want to improve your airline's customer service as soon as possible." Harold looked with a puzzled expression, but didn't ask any more questions. In a negotiation, questioning the other party's motivation was usually not a good idea, especially when billions of dollars were at stake. The meeting room turned into a battlefield. Lawyers were making phone calls, financial analysts were making calculations, executives were frantically reviewing documents. Robert was like a calm island in the midst of all this chaos, a rock standing firm against the storm. On the plane, Helen was sitting in her narrow seat in economy class. Next to her was an elderly couple, sweet people, but they had completely claimed the armrests. Helen took out her book and tried to read, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She had met Robert 5 years ago in a small cafe in London. Helen was teaching English literature at Birkbeck College at the time, and Robert was a businessman who had just moved to the city. They had coincidentally sat at the same table in the same cafe. The cafe was crowded, and there were no empty tables. Helen was reading a book. Robert was reviewing financial reports. "I don't mean to disturb you, but could I share this table?" Robert had asked. The attraction between them was immediate. Helen wasn't impressed by Robert's wealth and status. In fact, she hadn't even asked what he did for a living on their first date. Robert was impressed by Helen's indifference. Being just Robert in her eyes was much more valuable than being Mr. Parker or CEO. Even after they got married, Helen had insisted on maintaining her modest lifestyle. Of course, she now had financial security and lived in luxury homes, but she was still the same Helen, someone who loved reading books, enjoyed spending time with her former students, and stayed away from ostentation. Instead of spending money on unnecessary luxuries, she preferred to donate to charities. Thanks to Robert's fortune, she had started major projects in education, established libraries, created scholarships. During the second hour of the flight attendant Christina was serving drinks to economy class. When she came to Helen's row, she gave her a quick look. "Would you like a drink?" Christina asked, pretending not to remember their previous encounter. She had a professional smile on her face, but there was still a look of condescension in her eyes. "Water, please," said Helen politely. Christina filled a plastic cup with water and handed it to Helen. In economy class, drinks were always served in plastic cups, very different from the crystal glasses in first class. Just then, cabin chief Melissa rushed down the aisle and whispered something in Christina's ear. Christina's facial expression suddenly changed, a mixture of shock, fear, and concern. "Ms. Parker," said Melissa, turning to Helen, "could we speak with you privately?" Helen looked surprised. "Of course." They went to the galley at the front of the plane. Melissa looked tense. Her hands were trembling, and her face was pale. "Ms. Parker, first I want to offer you my most sincere apologies on behalf of the company. There's been a terrible misunderstanding with your ticket. We'd like to invite you to first class. Your seat was already reserved there. Helen smiled slightly. Thank you, but I'm happy with my seat. I was already absorbed in my book. Melissa looked even more tense. Please, I insist, Miss Parker. This is very important for you and for our company. Helen raised her eyebrows. Why did it suddenly become so important? Melissa hesitated, then lowered her voice. We've just been informed. Your husband, Mr. Parker, has bought Atlas Air. The deal was signed this morning, and he's currently on his way to Singapore on another plane behind us. Helen's smile widened. Oh, is that so? How interesting. She had guessed Robert would do something like this. She knew how determined her husband could be, especially when it came to Helen. Her joke-like message had apparently turned into a real action. This was a typical move by Robert, overprotective but also romantic. Please, Miss Parker, Melissa pleaded. Your initial ticket was already for first class. Christina made a big mistake, and this could cost her her job, Helen thought. Christina's behavior wasn't nice, but Helen wasn't someone who sought revenge. In fact, she believed Christina could learn something from this experience. Well, where's Christina now? Helen asked. In the first-class cabin, said Melissa. She's on duty there right now. Helen nodded. I have a message for her. Please tell her that the new company owner's wife says, treat everyone first class because you don't know every passenger's story. Melissa looked relieved. Thank you, Miss Parker. So, would you like to move to first class? Helen showed her book. I'm comfortable right now, thank you. But I'll let you know if I need anything. Melissa left in astonishment. The wife of Atlas Air's new owner, the wife of a billionaire businessman, preferred to sit in economy class. This was the strangest situation she had encountered in her career. When Melissa returned to the first-class cabin, she pulled Christina aside and explained the situation. Christina's face turned ashen. What? That woman is Mrs. Parker? She stammered. And they bought the company? Yes, said Melissa. And she has a message for you. Melissa relayed Helen's message. Christina froze, shaken by a deep sense of shame. Throughout her career, she had classified passengers based on their appearance, and now this habit could cost her her job. What should I do? She asked, her voice trembling. You could apologize, said Melissa, but Mrs. Parker prefers to stay in economy class. She's reading a book right now. Christina nodded, making her decision. Apologizing to the new owner's wife could save her career. For the rest of the flight, Christina came to economy class several times, trying to offer Helen special service. Champagne, first-class meals, extra pillows. Helen politely declined all of them, just drank her tea and continued reading her book. Christina tried to apologize on each visit, but Helen just smiled and said, It's really not a problem. In fact, Helen saw a teaching opportunity in this situation. Sometimes the most effective lessons were learned not through punishment or revenge, but through unexpected mercy and understanding. When they arrived in Singapore, Helen was among the last to leave the plane. At the terminal gate, Robert was waiting for her, along with Atlas Air's CEO Harold Thompson and a group of senior executives. Here's my beautiful wife, said Robert, embracing Helen. He was still wearing the suit he had put on in the morning, but had loosened his tie. His face had a tired but happy expression. Helen hugged him back. Hello, darling. How was your flight? I hope it was more comfortable than mine. Robert laughed. After I got your message, I expedited buying the airline. The team was surprised, but sometimes in business, you need to act quickly. You can't be serious, said Helen, pulling back. I was joking, Robert. I know, said Robert, with a devilish gleam in his eyes. But I wasn't joking. We were already looking at Atlas Air. I just accelerated the process. Helen shook her head, but couldn't hide her smile. Robert always loved making grand gestures. Harold Thompson stepped forward with a tense expression on his face. In his 60s, short, overweight, his sweaty forehead and flushed face showed how stressful the last few hours had been. Mrs. Parker, please accept my deepest apologies for the misunderstanding. I will take appropriate measures for our cabin crew, especially for Christina Martinez. I am truly sorry you were subjected to such treatment. Helen gently interrupted Harold. Mr. Thompson, there's no need to punish anyone. In fact, I have a suggestion for Christina. Harold frowned. Christina, the first-class flight attendant? Yes, said Helen. I suggest she be given the opportunity to manage the company's customer service training program. She can teach how passengers should be evaluated not by their outward appearance, but by who they are. Harold looked surprised but nodded. Of course, Mrs. Parker. Whatever you say. Christina was waiting with the other cabin crew at the airport terminal. Melissa had told her everything. The arrival of the Parker couple, Helen's suggestion, everything. Christina sat in a corner, her hands trembling, waiting for her career to end. Her behavior towards such an important passenger would certainly cause her to lose her job. When Harold and his team came to find Christina, the young woman's face paled. Mr. Thompson, I'm really sorry. I didn't know. Harold raised his hand. Ms. Martinez, Mrs. Parker wants to speak with you. Christina came to Helen's side with shaky steps, her eyes filled with tears. Mrs. Parker, I want to offer my deepest apologies for what happened yesterday. My behavior was inexcusable. Helen smiled kindly. Christina, we all make mistakes. What's important is what we learn from these mistakes. Will I lose my job? Christina asked, her voice trembling. Quite the contrary, said Helen. I want to suggest a new position for you. Atlas Air's Customer Experience Training Director. Your experience could be very valuable for this position. What do you think? Christina was shocked. Instead of being fired, was she getting a promotion? I don't know what to say, Mrs. Parker. Thank you is enough, said Helen. And perhaps you can pass on the lesson you've learned from this experience to other employees. Robert looked at his wife with admiration. This was why he had fallen in love with Helen, for her wisdom, compassion, and ability to give people second chances. Wealth hadn't changed her. She was still the same modest, understanding woman. Do you have any other ideas about the future of Atlas Air, Mrs. Parker? Harold asked, now with complete seriousness. Helen smiled. Actually, I do. I think everyone needs a little more legroom in economy class. Robert laughed. That can be arranged. And perhaps, Helen continued, we can reduce the distinction between first class and economy a bit. Everyone deserves a comfortable journey, don't they? Harold nodded as if taking notes. Absolutely, Mrs. Parker. Our team will evaluate these suggestions. That evening, in the suite at the top floor of the Marina Bay Sands Hotel in Singapore, Helen and Robert were discussing the day's events. From the suite's balcony, Singapore's impressive city view was visible. Skyscrapers, lights, the energy of a vibrant metropolis. You really bought an airline, said Helen, still laughing at the absurdity of the situation. Just because I was denied first class? Robert raised his champagne glass. I would do anything for you, you know that. You went overboard, darling. Perhaps, said Robert, but we were already looking at Atlas Air. I just accelerated my decision, and now my dear wife will reshape the company's customer service. Helen shook her head. I just wanted to give Christina a chance. Everyone deserves a second chance. One of my favorite things about you, said Robert, holding his wife's hand. You can see everyone's potential in a way others can't. Helen smiled. Just like you saw me in that cafe. I'll never forget that day, said Robert. A crowded cafe, a beautiful woman reading a book. When I told you who I was, you weren't impressed at all. Because what impressed me wasn't your title, but your character, said Helen. A week later, Helen and Robert returned to London. Robert had begun restructuring Atlas Air's management, but had decided to keep Harold Thompson as CEO. The man's experience was valuable. Christina Martinez had started her new role, Atlas Air's Customer Experience Training Director. Her first task was to teach all cabin crew how to greet passengers equally and respectfully. She was using her own experience as a case study, openly acknowledging her mistakes and sharing what she had learned from them. A month later, Atlas Air announced a major change. A new service philosophy called First Class Experience for Everyone. More legroom in economy seats, better meals, and respectful treatment for every passenger were guaranteed. Heading the program was the new Customer Experience Director, Christina Martinez, with Helen Parker as her mentor. This program will change the face of our company, said Harold Thompson at the press conference. At Atlas Air, we believe every passenger is valuable, regardless of which ticket class they travel in. At the press conference, Christina also gave a speech. I want to share a lesson I learned from a personal experience, she said. When I judged a passenger by their appearance, I not only did an injustice to them, but I also harmed myself and my company. With this program, we commit to treating all our passengers equally and respectfully. Helen sat at the back of the conference hall, smiling with pride and satisfaction. Seeing Christina's transformation was satisfying. Sometimes, even in the most unexpected events, there were opportunities for learning and growth. Atlas Air's new slogan could be seen on all planes, boarding passes, and advertisements. Every passenger has a story. Treat everyone first class. This slogan perfectly summarized the company's new philosophy, but more importantly, it reflected Helen's philosophy of life, the belief that everyone is valuable, everyone deserves respect. 6 months later, Atlas Air's customer satisfaction rates had risen to record levels. Passengers were satisfied with the service they received, even in economy class. The company's stock value had increased, employee morale had risen. Robert's investment had also turned out to be financially wise. One evening, Helen and Robert sat in their garden, watching the sunset. Their spacious mansion in London's suburbs was luxurious, but away from ostentation, just as Helen preferred. I got an email from Christina today, said Helen. The customer experience program has achieved great success. Other airlines have started to implement similar programs. Thanks to you, said Robert, holding his wife's hand. Helen shook her head. No, thanks to you buying the airline. Robert laughed. You'll never forget this, will you? Never, said Helen, planting a kiss on her husband's cheek. But I must admit, it's the best I was denied first-class gift I've ever received. Robert smiled. I'll always treat you first class, Helen, even with jeans and sneakers. And I'll always love you not as a billionaire CEO, but as the man who spilled tea on my book in the cafe, said Helen. As the sun disappeared on the horizon, Helen thought about the strange turns of life. Being denied first class on an airline had led to owning an airline. Sometimes life's greatest lessons and blessings came from the most unexpected events. The next day, Helen started a new project, a foundation providing equal opportunities in education. Inspired by Christina's transformation, Helen had seen how people could make use of second chances. Now she wanted to give more people a second chance, through education, through opportunities, by creating a society that values each other. Robert, as always, supported his wife's vision. Helen's passion for making the world a better place impressed him more every day. And perhaps next time he wouldn't have to buy another company. Helen's ideas were powerful enough to create change without an acquisition. Atlas Air had gone beyond just being an airline. It had become a platform for spreading the ideas of equality, respect, and the notion that everyone has a story. And every new passenger, every new employee was learning Helen's simple message. Treat everyone first class because you don't know every passenger's story. This story wasn't just about an airline seat. It was about how we judge people, how we treat them, and our ability to see the potential in the person in front of us. Helen Parker, with her jeans and sneakers, continued to remind everyone of this valuable life lesson. If you enjoyed our video, don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever been misjudged based on your appearance? Where in the world are you watching from today? Share with us in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories of unexpected heroes.